Hello, everyone. Welcome to CLTV, a production of the National Writing Project's Educator Innovator. Today is March 27th, 2019. I am Christina Cantrell. I'm from the National Writing Project, and I'm super excited to host this webinar today with Lainey Castle from the American Library Association. We are here to talk with Writing Project and library colleagues from across the country about community screenings and conversations that they have hosted or are planning to host around and related to the PBS documentary American Creed. Today, we will kick off by hearing from colleagues from both the Northwest Arkansas Writing Project and the Oklahoma State University Writing Project. And then we'll take questions from our webinar attendees who represent approximately 13 libraries from around the country. And all these libraries have received a grant to support an American Creed community conversation. These grants come from ALA and Citizen Film, the makers of the documentary, and the funding is provided by the National Endowment for the Humanities. And jump in here, Lainey.
Yes, hi. I'm Lainey. I'm with the Public Programs Office at ALA. Thank you, Christina, for all of your work putting together this webinar and the others that are part of this project. I think it's a great way to sort of get people together on a semi-regular basis to check in about the project and go through some ideas. So thank you for your work. And on behalf of ALA, we're very happy and excited to be partnering with the National Writing Project and with Citizen Film on the American Creed Community Conversations Project. And we also extend thanks to NEAT for their support of the effort. I'm sure everyone shares the feeling that it's increasingly important that libraries around the country take an active role in offering programs that engage the public with issues that matter and respectful dialogue about those issues. So thank you to all the libraries who have opted to be part of this project, who put together such thoughtful proposals and who have made the time to be with us here today. We appreciate your work and are happy that you're here with us. As we move ahead in the grant term, just a reminder that we're really hoping to hear from you as you move along, as you move through your work. Please share your success stories, your challenges, your questions on our project discussion list. And if you have the bandwidth and the time to do it, we also encourage you to incrementally fill out your final report form to let us know about the programs as they're happening in your communities. So that's it from me. Thank you, everyone, for taking the time to be with us.
Yes, thank you, and really well said, Lainey. We very much feel like colleagues in this work, trying to think about how to support these conversations in a range of places and spaces around the country. And so we'll spend the first about 30 minutes here listening to some of my writing project colleagues who have been hosting screenings and community conversations in their communities. And I'll sort of lead it off with a little bit of interview style just to keep us moving. And then we will open up to conversations around questions that folks might have who are about to do a similar thing in their places and spaces. Please use the chat feature in Zoom to post questions along the way. That'll help us get a sense of what people are wondering about and thinking about so we can sort of direct the conversation. And then for those of you who just joined, we're suggesting you use the mute button to mute yourself while others are speaking, so just so that your video doesn't, pop up when your dog barks or something. Because we are recording this to share with others too. So thank you so much again for making and taking the time. And I wanted to just first welcome my colleague, Vicki Collette from the Northwest Arkansas Writing Project. And Vicki, I'd really love to know, why did you want to organize a screening of American Creed in the first place and then host a related conversation in your community?
Well, I appreciate the chance to tell you a little bit about our work in Northwest Arkansas. I'm Associate Director of the Northwest Arkansas Writing Project, and what really prompted our screening of the film and the community conversation was that I had an opportunity to watch an initial screening of American Creed, and the first time I watched it, it brought tears to my eyes, and I just had a burning feeling that I really had to do something with this, because I knew that the message that the film portrays is so important. It's really critical for our time. And so I just started thinking about what we could do in our area to make people aware of the film and to support conversations about it. Northwest Arkansas, like many rural areas, was historically a very homogeneous region, but that has changed in recent decades, and we've had a lot of diversity of people and opinions. And so it's really important for us to be able to have those respectful civil conversations. And I feel like the film really depicts how that can happen.
Great, thank you. And I'd love to hear more, or I think we'd all love to hear more about how you went about sort of supporting those respectful, constructive, healthy conversations in your community, even across difference, and the ways that you opened the conversations.
Sure. Well, I was really excited when I saw the film that it features an Arkansas native, a former University of Arkansas student, Terrence Davenport. And so I thought that that would make the film very personal and meaningful for the people in our area. And we were actually able to bring Terrence in as a keynote speaker, which was really amazing because he's so passionate about the things he talks about in the film. And I just felt like Terrence and the film together would really make an impact, and I wasn't disappointed. So to start off the evening, I showed a short YouTube video about the United States, the 24 period of the 4th of July condensed into a 4-minute video with music by 30 Seconds to Mars. And I really wanted to bring energy into the room as we gathered, and so the video really did it quickly and brought us all on topic and, thinking about our nation and the things that unite and divide us. So I will include a link in the chat feature after I'm done talking here. We felt like that video would really set the stage and just brought that energy into the room. And then after the video, Terrence gave a short keynote address, and then we showed the film. And after that, we had a few minutes of quiet writing time. As people had come in, we just handed them a blank note card, and I posted some reflection questions after the film, and then we just had that quiet time where people took a few minutes to write what was sticking with them after viewing the film. And then we had an open discussion, and after the discussion, we had some Q&A. Terrence answered some questions, I answered some questions, and then I gave a quick overview of resources that I'd compiled, and we planned for a follow-up a month later.
That's great. And this the follow-up, who attended your event, Vicki? So mostly educators in your community?
So we had, of course, our network that we can easily reach is educators, but we also had them bring their high school students along, which was really awesome. So in all, we had only about 30 or 40 people. We marketed it every way we could think of, and so it was a little disappointing to have only 30 or 40 people show up. But then I remembered that starfish story. Some of you may have heard the starfish story about a little boy walking along the beach, throwing the starfish back into the ocean one by one, and some older man comes by and tells him that it's pointless, that it really doesn't make a difference. But as the story goes, the boy just nonchalantly says, well, it just made a difference to that starfish. And so I think it's important to keep in mind that even if our crowds aren't huge when we do the screenings, that we can make a difference just, one by one.
That's lovely. I think that's so important to keep in mind, and to think about our collective impact in that way too, I think is really important. So if you could just share with us, what are some of the key takeaways that you had from this? What did you learn from it by doing that?
Well, I learned that it really did make a difference for at least one, and that made it all worth it. I mentioned that we had some high school students there, and it was a really powerful moment in our discussion after the screening when a high school student told us that before coming to the screening, she'd been thinking about creating a new club at her school. She said there was already a Young Democrats Club and a Young Republicans Club, and she'd been thinking about creating a Young Libertarians Club. But after the film, she decided that instead what she needed to do was create a club where high school students could talk across these divides. She decided that she wanted to be part of a solution instead of creating another chasm. So the screening really made a difference for her, and then her intent was to go out and make a difference at her high school.
Oh, I love that story. I think that's such a powerful piece of this work, so thank you for sharing that. Why don't we move over to Oklahoma now? Thank you, Vicki. That was awesome. And Shelby and Suzanne, maybe you can introduce yourselves and then tell us a little bit about why you want to have a screening in your community.
Thank you for having us. I'm Shelby Whitty, and I am the site director of the Oklahoma State University Writing Project. I'm so glad to be joined by our teacher expert, Suzanne Sutton. Suzanne?
Sorry, hi, I'm Suzanne Sutton. I teach 8th grade pre-AP English in Oklahoma City at Classen School of Advanced Studies. And so I was really fortunate to get tapped to work with other educators across the country on developing teacher resources and the response questions, the invitations for writing to the film in California. And as you know, Shelby mentioned, we got to kind of was in a privileged position to host a screening because one of the participants in the film is a native Oklahoman. I'll give it back to Shelby. She can talk about how we organize all of that.
Sure. So yes, we knew that Deirdre Privet was one of the focus teachers or principals spoken about in the film, and she is one of our graduates of our university and a Tulsa area educator. So we knew we wanted to position our screening in Tulsa. We have, as the writing project, we span both the Stillwater and Tulsa areas. So we focused our attention in Tulsa and created a day-long event with a screening and conversation in the morning, and then the afternoon, a more pedagogical how to apply this and use it in your schools approach in the afternoon. So we really were aiming towards not only having the experience of a learner in the viewing and the conversation, but then applying it in the afternoon. I wanted to kind of piggyback on what Vicki said. We also had more than 100 people register, but less than half of that showed up. It was a Saturday, so there's the challenge of that, but it's not a coincidence that this was within just a few weeks of the teacher walkout in Oklahoma. And I think it's really important to mention that teachers and educators were just exhausted at this point and just kind of ready to not continue to give their Saturdays and all of their additional time without some sort of recognition of that. So I think that had a lot to do with the turnout. We had a great, vibrant group of more than 30 people there that were excited to watch the film. We had a panel of folks kind of lead a conversation after watching the film. Deirdre was one of those participants. We asked one of our co-directors, Dwayne Dickens, who is very involved in the John Hope Franklin group in Tulsa, which is a group that really focuses on the Tulsa race riots and how racial divides have damaged Tulsa in lots of ways, and how there's a reconciliation happening and bringing people together. So he was part of that panel, as well as Joe Flory, one of our lead teachers, and Shanidra Nowell, a critical media and political expert. So they did a panel discussion and fielded questions from the wide range of folks that were there. And Suzanne, you want to talk about the afternoon activities?
Sure. I just, want to mention having that panel there was just really a great way to kind of bridge that divide from watching it and then moving into the activities, because, they came prepared with questions to ask each other. And so there were already kind of those ideas forming before we got into the, professional development part. So we knew our audience was mostly going to be educators. And so as part of the teacher group that developed resources, I wanted to make sure that they would have some activities to go ahead and take back to the classroom with them that they could do with either the whole film, or if they just wanted to do portions of the film and kind of have responses to that. And so how I do it in my classroom, and I love, Vicki, that you mentioned the 30 Seconds to Mars video, because I found that this last year, and we use that as kind of the springboard for my lessons this past fall. And of course, kids love, 30 Seconds to Mars. It was wonderful. As the students and even your participants watch, I would just had them kind of jot down those ideas that kept repeating, or any kind of like quotes that spoke to them, and that just kind of like keep, a notebook or a piece of paper just of those kind of things. And I would have my students do a word wall where they could put those ideas on a giant piece of butcher paper or a giant Post-it or something. And just, that was a good way to foster that kind of community collaboration. And everybody's putting these words on the same piece of paper, kind of a thing. We didn't have time for that at our community screening, so we just kind of pretended that we did that. We moved on to the next one, where we worked on the whole message of the film is kind of, not only addressing these divides that we have, these undertones that we're still dealing with as a nation, all these negatives, but also ultimately the film has a hopeful outlook for that. So I wanted an activity to kind of express that. So we looked at kind of the negative associations, words that we kind of are in our culture. So things like racism, prejudice, things like that. And we come up with words like that. And then using a simple activity where we would just kind of flip, remove or add letters to those negative words, we would turn them into positives, and think about, like, just by changing a little bit, we can change our outlook and turn these negatives to positives. And then we also created new words. So using those same list of words from the film, we would smash new words together to create new words. So we would take words like liberty and unity, smash them together to be liberty or something like that. So it's just a fun way to, think of new positive ways to bring this into the classroom. Kids loved it. The educators loved it. And it's a really kind of a low stakes activity. You don't feel like you have to be a teacher to present these ideas to, even if you had a community of older people, it's a great way to like foster those kind of conversations, because you're just dealing with the words themselves, and then those lead to those conversations. So it went really, really well and really fast. It was a lot of fun.
Yes, the day went very quickly. And one or two of the comments from the participants is the film is an excellent example of what respectful dialogue can look like. To piggyback on Vicki's student that wanted to start that sort of conversation in the school. They really felt like the film is a model for students on how to be respectful in times where our discussions become more heated and more passionate, and we become more emotional. And secondly, it was a great way to have the types of conversations, or at least an interest to the conversations we're often nervous to dip our toe into as educators, because we're somewhat hesitant to rock the boat, so to speak. But it was a good, safe way to engage in conversations, much needed conversations, without the fear of backlash from parents who felt as if you were being more political in one direction or another.
A socialist loser teacher like myself. So I will note that all of my lessons for that are in the educator resources at americancreed.org. So anybody can go and access any of the lessons, not only mine, but the other teachers from across the country as well. They have a there's a great bank of things there if you want to bring those into your community conversations. So it's a great resource to have.
Great, and I added a couple links to those resources in the chat here, and we'll make sure that they get distributed with this video. So thank you so much. And it is true, AmericanCRE.org has links to all the related work. And at the Writing Project, we supported teachers in working with their kids to also publish online. So there's a website that many of Suzanne's students have published to called Writing Our Future /American Creed. And that was set up to support youth in continuing the conversations that were started in the film. So that website itself actually is another set of texts that could be used to further conversations in your communities that were written by young people, also looking and thinking about the ideas in this film. So thank you so much for those contributions. So Suzanne and Shelby, what were one of the big sort of lessons learned that you take away from this experience? And then we'll move to questions, but I just wanted to see if you have, like, what are some of the big lessons learned, or if you were to do it again, what did you take away?
I think one big lesson is folks are thirsty for these types of conversations and events to happen. They are very interested. They want to dialogue. They're tired of negativity that can sometimes emanate from particular media sources. So it was a refreshing and welcoming time, and without any hostilities at all whatsoever. And so it was just a great opportunity to come together and learn more about one another. And I think ultimately we realized that there's so much more to know about one another than we do know. And some great work's happening clearly in our backyard. And we just need a chance to champion that more often. And as librarians and educators, we're often hesitant to toot our own horns. So it was very nice for the film to celebrate these teachers and these individuals who, throughout the country, who are doing important work.
I just saw a question pop up about like how to ensure diversity among that. And so like Vicki mentioned, like she advertised to anyone, any place she can think of. Shelby and I were also talking about like how to get the word out. And so obviously like the colleges was the most like obvious choice, but Shelby, if you want to like talk a little bit more about who else we contacted to invite.
Sure. Right. So we used the John Hope Franklin Network to promote the Tulsa community colleges. The PBS stations promoted for us as well. And we were in local news, etc. So we had pretty wide coverage that linked back to our RSVP. And we didn't charge, of course. It was a free event, even for the professional development. In the afternoon, we offered PD certificates and things like that. But we just needed a count so that we made sure that our room size was adequate enough for the viewing, for the work. And so I would just suggest trying to get a feel for who is coming by doing that. But we certainly used as many diverse connections as we could, not just racial diversity, socioeconomic diversity, LGBTQA. So we really wanted to make sure we had a good representation of a variety of perspectives in the room.
Great, wonderful. Thank you. It's really great to hear about this work happening in your communities. And I was wondering now if we could sort of, I'm sure there's lots more to tell, lots more to share, and I wonder if we could start to open up some questions. Lainey, it looks like there's a question or two from the chat. Do you want to?
Sure. A question from Mel. It says, I will be interested in hearing about conversations between passionate members of our communities. Was there conflict? How was this handled? How did people ensure a diverse group of attendees? And it looks like Vicki is ready to take that question.
Sure, I just feel like we did have that diverse group of attendees, maybe because we had a little bit of an incentive. I got a small grant, and we had free books available, both by Condoleezza Rice and David Kennedy. So we, and some other related texts. So everybody got to choose one. And so that was kind of a bait to get a variety of people in the room. But really, the film itself does the work for promoting appropriate conversations. And after you sit there and watch that film, I think the need for conflict becomes subsumed by the need for communication and finding common ground. And just the tone of the film itself, I think, mitigates any conflict that might arise. We didn't have conflict arise, although I know from the comments that were made that there were people from various political stances who joined us for the film screening. But the conversation really centered around finding that common ground. Again, I think because the film did that work for us.
There's a question here about how did you measure success? And I have something to add too. So, but maybe we could think about that question on the tail of what you just said, Vicki.
Okay, well, for me, I measured success by the comments that the participants made about their future actions. One of the prompts that I had for them to reflect on was, considering what next steps they might take based on what they'd seen and felt during the film. And so hearing their responses about what they intended to do next was how I measured success.
Shelby, or Suzanne, is there something from your community around success that you'd like to add?
Well, for an one measure might be there was a group of teachers that drove 4 hours to come and have this conversation. So I think, it showed that there is a need for professional development in some of our outreaching areas that never have an opportunity to have this kind of event. And so the fact that they were willing to come was really great. But many of our own National Writing Project, OSU Writing Project site teachers came as well, and then went back and implemented in their classroom. So a measure of success for us would be the implementation of this work with students in the classroom, and that's happening. We haven't done any follow-up as to the effect or the measure of that, but that would be an interesting line of study for sure.
I just, was really encouraged just, after the event, people coming up and being like, this is such important stuff to do, just even those little comments make it worth it. It's a commitment, and it takes a while to get things together, but even just, one person saying like, thank you for the opportunity, or we learned so much, thank you for the activities, things like that. So it's just little stuff.
I wanted to quickly build on, go back just a second, and this idea of, potential conflict. I've been present at a couple of screenings, or a few screenings at this point, and also workshops that we've done with teachers. And one of the things that I notice is that people come with lots of ideas of what Americancrete means. And so sometimes an opportunity, even just to write silently about what that means as the film starts to you, and then watch the film. I feel like there's something about getting a chance to sort of unpack that idea. There's also some historical content about that idea itself, and why the film is titled that I won't go in here now, because I'm sure I'll get some of the details wrong, but it's in the guide that and David Kennedy put together around really the naming of this film, and the Citizen Film did too. So I feel like there is a little bit about that, just that idea itself that carries a lot of weight and can be useful to sort of think about individually as well as talk about collectively.
There's another question from Kara. Kara is asking Vicki how much time you set aside for the post-screening elements, and maybe breaking it down by reflection, conversation, and a Q&A period, and then anything else you addressed.
Yeah, I saw that question, so I started digging because I couldn't remember for sure. But our event went from 5:15 until 8:15, and so I think we were probably starting the film by 5:45 or 6. How long is the movie? Can somebody remind me how long the film is?
It's about an hour and 20 minutes or so. I know
Yeah.
it's less than an hour and a half. Yeah.
Yeah, there's a
Might
few
be
different
shorter cut,
versions.
too. There are a couple versions, yeah.
Right, and we did watch the longer version.
The long one's 86 minutes, and
Okay.
then the one on PBS was 57 minutes, and there's also a shorter 49-minute version.
So we were, wow. Okay, so I'm just going to make a ballpark. I'm thinking that she's asking about the post-screening elements. The reflection really was just, 4 or 5 minutes of silent writing time. That feels like a very long time. I know it doesn't sound like long, but it feels like a long time. And then the conversation and Q&A, maybe 20 to 25 minutes-ish. So maybe Shelby or Suzanne can give an alternate time frame. We didn't do that half day of professional development. Ours was an evening, and so we started it as early as we felt like people could get there by 5:15, and then we tried to get them, out by 8:15. So
yeah, we did 3 hours all, and so 9 to 12 was the viewing and conversation for us, and then a break for lunch, and then a 3-hour PD after.
Okay. So 3 hours total seems like about right for the screening plus pre and post conversations.
Someone remarked that they're also working on an evening event, so it's very helpful. I just want to welcome anybody else to unmute themselves and to ask a question or make a suggestion or comment from, I know that many of you at libraries have hosted other conversations and community screenings, so thoughts or ideas that you have or things that you're planning to try? We are teachers, so we're good at wait time.
Okay. This is Mel again, who's asking a lot of questions. We are actually doing, can you guys hear me? Okay. We are actually planning on doing about 3 or 4 showings that are facilitated by local professors at our university, Chico State University. And then we're going to have one that is kind of a culminating one. But one of the things that we're dealing with is we don't expect teachers at all to be attending this. This will be strictly members of the public. And we were thinking that 2 hours is about the max attention span. You guys didn't, I'm just being, that's what our people facilitating also believe. So my question is, did anybody with you with the longer sessions, did you find any flagging of attention? Were everybody engaged? Was that because it was professional development maybe, as opposed to, just community conversation? I just don't know.
You know what? I feel like because we had a lot of educators and also high school students, there was never a flag in attention for 3 hours. I mean, the film itself is incredibly engaging, and the conversation felt so relevant. And I spent very minimal time, like less than 5 minutes, probably sharing classroom resources. I just showed them the links for where they could go and quickly walked them through what was there. But really, the conversation that we had was not about how I'm going to use this in my classroom. It was about, why is this important for our community? And I did not feel like 3 hours was a minute too long.
I would agree. Having the time, if you could use it, would be great. I would hate for you to not schedule enough time and then feel like you have to cut that conversation off for some reason. But if you have some pretty good facilitators who can ask probing questions and relate it directly to your community, I really feel like folks will get involved.
Thank you.
We have 20 minutes scheduled. Sorry, Vicki. I just wanted to say we have about 20 minutes scheduled, so we can really just open this up and talk about what you're doing and even what your hopes and dreams are about what you're doing. But Vicki, did you want to add something?
Well, I saw that somebody asked a question about using interpreters, and we did not, so I cannot add anything to that conversation, but what a great idea to include that opportunity. And obviously you end up needing about twice as long for the conversations if you're going to have it interpreted. So unless you have the luxury of having earphones that people can put on and have simultaneous translation.
We didn't either. We didn't have funding to do the work, and so the university was giving us the space on a Saturday gratis, and so to ask for an interpreter probably would have pushed it a little too far. But had we had that request, we certainly would have tried to accommodate, and I think it's lovely if you can.
I'm wondering also the implications, that just reminds me of the implications of some of the invites being multilingual. Are people thinking about that when they're developing their materials? And I'm asking the whole group here.
The other thing I'm wondering about, though, is the film is not translated. So the film itself would be in English. So, that poses some challenges about who is our audience, and are we really reaching out to the audience we want to just because of the language of the film.
I believe Citizen Film was talking about translations. Lena, do you have a sense of that at all, or no? Yeah, I don't really. But yeah, that's a really good point. I was wondering, not to put you on the spot, Colleen, but I know there are people who have maker spaces and making in their libraries. Has anybody thought, I mean, a lot of us are writing project teachers, and so we've been thinking about how to have writing be connected to this. Are there other ideas about how you might have different activities in your space related to this, whether maker or otherwise? Colleen inspired me to remember that.
Sorry, I was on mute there. Well, I would say other activities that are sort of writing related. I know that I saw in a few of the project applications like spoken word and poetry contest type things, both of which were cool ideas for kind of engagement at different age groups. on the themes that they want to, you know, discuss, if they want to do sort of an overall project theme or narrow it down to one of the themes that's explored in the film. Those were kind of, you know, a more interactive, I guess, activity that one can do that's writing related, which is great. From a makerspace perspective, I'm not sure that I would have to delve in a bit more on that. I'm not sure if others had, anyone else on the webinar had ideas about that, but.
Someone commented that we're focusing on low literate adults as participants. So I think, and then someone else is talking about a community art project. Would you mind unmuting and sort of talk about these things? Because I think they're really important in this conversation.
I think, Suzanne, you also had a graffiti wall, didn't you? I think there's some things and some activities that are very makerspace related.
Yeah, so the word wall is just the ideas and quotes like from the movie, and all it takes is just a big piece of butcher paper or a giant Post-it or something and some markers, and you just have them posted. And I had it up during the whole duration and then after of the film in my classroom. And then the like word activities, of course, you can use those in a makerspace kind of environment as well. And you just need, you know, paper, markers, maybe index cards or something like that. And it's just a really kind of low tech, engaging kind of a way to interact with the film.
I'm thinking about the target audience, and when we have students in K-12 education who maybe don't feel comfortable jumping right into the conversation, one thing that we often do is just do a partner talk with the person next to you, even if that's someone you don't know, just to give them a quick opportunity to turn and talk to the person on this side or turn and talk to the person on this side about what you're thinking, and, you know, give a specific prompt. And sometimes those partner talks kind of break the ice and then give them a chance to voice their ideas in a maybe safer context before opening it up to the whole group discussion. So that might be something to keep in mind, especially if you have, you know, a real diverse group of attendees at your screenings, just to give a little more comfort before launching into a bigger conversation.
Yeah, I imagine that you're probably going to have participants that come like either like as groups, and so they tend to kind of like gather with their own group. And so what kind of Vicki mentioned, you know, branching out just a little bit to bring other people into your conversation, get to know other people before opening up to big ones. I'm a big fan of the partner talk, or just, you know, 3 or 4 people together talking about something before opening it up to the whole group. It's a little less intimidating, or you can even just appoint a spokesperson for that group, you know, if they really don't want to share everything that they have to say about it. So it's a great idea.
I'm just seeing Kara's comment. She doesn't have a microphone, but she's talking about the community art project that they're doing in their gallery based on themes from the American Creed, and bringing a couple of printmaking classes in conjunction with the exhibit. So these sound like really awesome opportunities for people to express their feelings in a lot of different modes. And it's making me think about an exhibit, well, I guess the main exhibit now at the art museum in our area, where there's a shoelace art of, it just says "We the People" in like a huge banner, and then shoelaces, and it's just a real kind of mosaic that brings attention to the fact that there's so much diversity when we say "we the people." What does that really mean? And so I think there are a lot of ways that art could be used, and that you could think of maybe ways that everybody contributes their little piece to some kind of mosaic that is created right there after the screening. And that would be a really wonderful way to engage people and have them all feel like, you know, part of a community experience that they could then build from as they go out into the larger community.
Yeah, I'd say similar to the graffiti wall idea, for another one of our projects, a library set out lots and lots of magazines that folks donated, and they had people kind of on different themes. And this was like, I think they switched it out every 2 weeks, so they'd have a different theme for people to focus on. But they'd have a focal point sentence of like, what does "we the people" mean to you, for example? And folks would pull out or cut out pictures out of the magazines and put them up and maybe write a little bit next to it. And that's great for folks that don't want to write or aren't really kind of English isn't their first language, or they're just not, they don't consider themselves writers, that, you know, they can kind of capture it via image with magazine cutouts.
I love all these artwork ideas, and I'm totally going to steal them for my classroom unit next year when I do this. So that mosaic piece sounds like really powerful, Vicki. That's an amazing idea, and that's also something that can, you know, stay in the library for who knows how long, or whatever community center that you're at. I mean, and even though, and I know somebody mentioned they're having like 2 or 3 screenings, I mean, you can just like add to the first one and keep that conversation going, and people can talk about what other people have left behind. That's just an amazing, really powerful idea.
I wanted to bring in, Lainey, if you remember this, last month in January, we did heard from the Red Cedar Writing Project and their partnership with the East Lansing Public Library. And this was a mistake of scheduling, but I thought it was a fortuitous mistake potentially, and something to learn from. They had a singer-songwriter who was actually like scheduled sort of at the same time, and they luckily figured this out ahead of time and then invited him to participate in the event itself. So they actually had an opportunity for the event to open with some music and then close with some music, and he was able to tailor it to, you know, sort of his work around America and the ideas of the film, basically, and songs that he had. So it just seemed like they said it was a wonderful way to kind of open the space up, again, through a different mode and a different way of inviting people in to participate. So, fortuitous accident. It does look like we have a couple of questions. Erin, is that you? Do you want to, can you unmute or? All right. I'm not looking at, so there's one question is, if we're hosting 3 separate programs, are you all re-showing the film each time before a new activity, or just showing the film in the first program and having 2 subsequent programs with activities and panel discussion, hoping your audience will return? Is that, so your thought is like, do you do it once and then have a set of activities, or do you show it every time? Is that what your question is?
Yeah, exactly. Sorry, I was having some technical difficulty there for a second. Yeah, our plan was to host, you know, a total of 3 programs, and my understanding was that we would show the film in the first one. But I'm really concerned about drawing people back into the conversation if I'm hosting just standalone programs after that are kind of, you know, based on a series. But if you didn't come to the first one, then will the activities or panel discussion, you know, be fruitful or meaningful to you? So I'm just, and it's sounding like from what I'm hearing that others who have already gone through it, that there really is just like 1, maybe 2.5 or 3 hour long program that everyone's doing. Is it, you know, am I wrong to try to break this up into 3 separate programs, I guess is what my question and concern is.
I will say that I planned a follow-up event, and nobody RSVP'd to attend. That was going to be an opportunity for us to, you know, get together and share ideas about what we had done since viewing the screening, And, you know, I think it was timing. It was getting close to the end of the school year. We had a big teacher audience, but that's my experience. That doesn't mean that would be your experience, but I'll put it out there for what it's worth.
Sure. I guess I'm just kind of going by what the grant guidelines had said. Those had stated that we had to have 2 subsequent events. So I'm just, want to make sure that, because I agree with you, I think it would be pretty impossible to get people back for an activity if they didn't get to see the documentary.
Yeah. One thing that I've done in another setting is kind of had it spin off into actual community conversations like those that are highlighted in the film. My experience wasn't in connection with American Creed, but we did have those spin-off groups that were having this type of conversation. And so those would be considered follow-up events when people took the ideas and they did something themselves with them. But we were able to kind of facilitate those follow-up events where people were actually having these civil conversations in the community. So that might be a way to have the follow-up events as being a next step, if that's something that you're looking to do.
So when you say in the community, what does that mean exactly? You met at a coffee shop, or?
I think that would be one way that could happen. You could always have just make a room available at the library for those conversations, and not that it would necessarily be tied to the film itself, but that it would promote that kind of dialogue, the kinds of conversations that are highlighted in the film. If somebody wants to take the lead on that.
I think what Vicki you're referring to are those living room conversations. Is that the idea? Yeah. So that would be a good resource to go to. That was founded by Joan Blades, also the founder of MoveOn.org. So it's in that segment with her and then the founder of the Tea Party, which is a really powerful segment. And so even if you're going to host maybe like a smaller event, that might be like a good segment to show and then do your conversation kind of based about that. Because I think that's in my opinion, that's one of the more powerful moments of the film and really engaging those community conversations. So if you're planning a shorter event or a follow-up event, you might just maybe focus on that kind of aspect.
Yeah, I wanted to just add, one of the things to keep in mind is that at the Writing Project, we've been doing these, we didn't have the same grant that you did, so we didn't have the same exact parameters that you did. Now some of our colleagues are getting these grants, and so we can, we'll start to talk about those things. But I do think that there are lots of clips connected to the film that were collected that really do point to these specific strategies for dialogue that then could be used in other contexts. I wanted to note that Kara on the chat wrote that we're doing a panel discussion on diversity in the school district first, and then the screening will be second, followed by an art exhibition. So that's a lovely way to also build out that. I noticed earlier that Mel talked about creating a civics Saturday. And that the state humanities is interested in funding that. So that would be a different, but related. So taking the ideas and the inspiration from the film and then developing programming off that and using a bunch of the resources in the film. There's also another, Citizen University is another group that's highlighted in the film. Eric Liu, I believe is his name, is the cast member, but their website has a lot of resources about supporting civic and civil dialogue. Again, you can sort of build from the momentum of this film for lots of different events afterwards. And I mean, what we're hoping to do, and Lainey and I are in discussion about this, is keep bringing people back who are doing these too. So we should continue to learn from each other, because it sounds like it's really going to look different in different places, and you're going to design in different ways. And of course, the way that for our communities, how we might think about it might be different than what you do at the library. I think these questions about multilingual communities and supporting folks in lots of different ways of expressing themselves and expressing what comes out of the film for them, I think is really, really important. So I'd love to continue to have these conversations. We are at the top of the hour though, so maybe we could just do quick last thoughts. Lainey, do you have anything you want to share before we close out for today?
I don't. I think everyone's contributions about the different things you're doing have been great, and I appreciate it. Thank you.
Great. Well, thanks everybody for being here, and I always talk about making and taking the time, like actually making this happen today is really great for us to have the chance to dialogue about what's possible in these community opportunities. And so I want to thank my colleagues, especially for sharing their work and for hosting these conversations. I want to say congratulations to all the ALA folks here, and really excited to learn more from you about how things go in your community, and keep developing these along the way. So thank you for participating today.
Thank you.
Thanks.